Hi, I'm Jim Raffle. Welcome to this episode of the Jim and Shelby Show, the All Things Print Podcast. I'm here as always with my co-host.
Hi, I'm Shelby Sabusic. How are you today, Jim?
I am fantastic. Just got back off another week on the road, and I thought we would talk this week about the concept of speaking, publicly speaking, whenever and wherever, not just when we're asked to. I was going to say that, but it's really about we have to also seek those opportunities out and what those opportunities end up meaning to our business. So,
When do we when do we seek them out? I need an example. I'm not sure what you're talking about.
well, I mean, now it seems easy, but when I started speaking publicly, I had to actually go looking for places that were looking for speakers. So when you get an opportunity to speak at like the ISA Sign Expo, like we just did, that didn't just happen the first time around. I mean, now we've been speakers there several years in a row. So when their calls for speakers go out, they come to us. I don't know if it's at the same time as other people, but we're definitely always in that email list. Same thing. Printing United right now is looking for speakers for the upcoming expo, and we were asked to be, on that list, right? But that's not the way it's always been. Several years ago, I had to reach out to people I knew and ask, how can we be invited to speak, or how can we apply to speak at these events? And it is something, though, that it gains momentum. Once you've spoken in a few places, people start to actually seek you out, but that's not the way it starts. And when it comes to, to a business strategy, obviously for us, those kinds of expos are the place to speak. For people listening to the podcast, if you're a dye sublimation printer, a conventional printer, you're going to want to speak at places where your customers are showing up. So for you, it literally could be speaking at much more local events. We have to look for national events because our customer base comes from everywhere. Doesn't mean we exclude local events, but there's not always a lot of opportunities to speak at a local level that's going to attract a large number of our potential customers. But if you're a printing company or a sign company or a vehicle wrap company, and you speak at a local chamber of commerce meeting, literally almost everybody there could potentially be your customer. Does that make sense?
I think so. Yeah.
And where we speak about our expertise, which is color and color management, if you're a vehicle wrap person, you may not necessarily speak directly about vehicle wrap. You might talk more about branding, right? And how vehicle wrapping is a very powerful form of branding, and your presentation might include a lot of facts and figures about how wrapping your vehicle is, an economically better way to advertise than some other method. I don't know, by the way, that's all supposition on my part. I don't know if that's all true, but that's the kinds of things that you want to speak about because you want to speak to your audience. In other words, if I have X number of dollars to spend on advertising, do I want to spend it on vehicle wraps or pop-up signs, or what is it I want to promote from the podium? Because you are always promoting from the podium, but there's a difference between promoting and selling. And you can promote by education. You definitely cannot sell through education. That just does not work, in my opinion, from the front of the room. So kind of circling back, our main topic goal today is why public speaking is part of our business model and how it might be useful for those of you listening to us today. So, let's just work through like an example. We just spoke at the ISA Sign Expo. Let's give people an idea what it looked like to make that happen, right? I mean, so do you remember? I think we talked about it on one of the recent episodes. When did we actually submit our topic suggestions? Like last fall, right? Like September, October, something like that.
I think the call for submissions comes out in July or August. And I know for sure the submission was due sometime in February, or I'm sorry, in September.
Right. And so it's 6, 7 months ahead of the actual event, right?
Yes.
So that's one of the things you want to keep in mind if you're going to use speaking as one of your business strategies. And I, by the way, I'm highly recommending it because it makes you approachable. It makes you real to your potential customers. Um, it takes time. I mean, it's not like you can decide today, I want to make public speaking part of my business strategy and be speaking probably even next month. You're probably looking at 4, 5, 6, 7 months down the road before you're going to get your first significant public speaking event where you're going to have an audience of a size that's, 25, 30, 50, 100, whatever it might be. That takes planning. And one of the things you can do to plan is have a list of topic ideas, right? I mean, we didn't like really sit and scratch our heads very long about what we wanted to talk about. I think one or both of us had ideas pretty much as soon as we saw that call for speakers, right? I know I had an idea that you weren't thrilled with initially. It ended up being what we actually did, what we did go with. It took a lot of work together to make it something we were both comfortable with. But at a overarching level, I had an idea that I felt was going to work for us, and we did go with something very similar to, or pretty much that idea. As I said, again, it took a lot of back and forth to make it something we were both comfortable talking about for close to an hour. So that's something to consider: is what are you going to be comfortable talking about for an hour? Because what I don't think works, just through personal experience, is putting together a very structured presentation where you're essentially reading the bullet points on the slides. I feel like that is not what captures people and motivates them to want to come talk to you afterwards and ask you what you do and how they can work with you, right? I find that what makes that work is when we tell our stories. And so I really like to use the TED Talk analogy, right? I think our slides with very captivating images and few words that you and I then back up with our own stories of what it was like to do whatever that slide's talking about. Like our most recent presentation was about spot colors and brand colors, really, and how powerful they are. But we also talked about how we implemented those brand colors for several customers, right? And I think it's the telling of those stories that mattered more than the actual slides, right?
I think so. I mean, anybody can get up there and read slides, but then what are they paying for? What are they, I mean, whether they're paying monetarily or with their time, they're still paying to come and hear you speak. And I think when you need to share your experiences so that, you're just not trying to get across a concept because we say it's right. We actually put this to the test and this was the actual result. Here's the proof. I think those kinds of experiences and that kind of sharing with people resonates more. I think you're right about that.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing is, don't expect to be, at least in our industry, don't expect to be highly compensated for your speaking. In many cases, when we speak, our compensation is modest. And in other cases, there is none, except for perhaps free admission to the event, which can also be valuable, depending on what the event is. That is not without value if you were going to go anyway. But oftentimes you're going, at least early on, until you've proven yourself, you're probably going to be speaking without being compensated. I will caution you, do not speak at situations where they're asking you to pay. That to me that's a personal no. Never going to happen, where it's like, oh, if you sponsor the event and pay an extra $500, we'll give you a 25-minute speaking slot. No, thanks. I have no interest in that. I'm not saying it won't work for other people. I personally don't think that that's the way it should work. You either have enough respect for the knowledge and expertise that we're bringing to the event that at the very least, you're going to, ask us to speak at no cost and try and compensate us in a non-cash way. In other words, being able to attend the event, whatever it might be, some other way of at least recognizing that that we brought value to the event. I don't know. What are your feelings on that one?
Oh, I definitely don't want to pay to play. No, that's we are. I don't think we are in a position with our business and this industry at this point in the life of our business, I guess, where we should have to pay. Now, if you're starting out and you just really think that you have something important to say and it's the only way you can be heard, maybe I could see that. But if you are continuously doing that, then I just don't feel like you have much validation, right? I mean, it, I don't have a problem showing up to speak and not getting paid, to be honest with you, because at least we are given a stage, we're given an audience, right? There's other ways of payment too, by the way, marketing. If they're, whatever the event is or the organization is, if they're helping to cross promote your speaking gig, your name and your company name is out there, your picture's out there, what you're going to be speaking about is out there, and it does give you some credit. But paying for it, nah, not unless you are really just a startup, I think.
Right. Yeah. Spoken like a true chief marketing officer.
I mean, this is not just about speaking, though. I mean, think about internships. When I was in school, one of the things my journalism advisors constantly told us, don't you dare take a non-paid internship or one where you have to pay to be a part of, spend time at this, whatever it was. For me, it was newspapers, to actually be a part of the organization and contribute, because we were I mean, you are giving real life knowledge or opinions from your experiences or what you've learned, whatever it is. Don't give things away necessarily, right? And certainly don't pay to play. I've just never been a fan of that ever since I was in high school or college.
Right. I agree with that. And so let's talk about kind of the results side of this. If you're willing to take the time to plot out a strategy that could be 6 to 8 months long before you even get your first major speaking opportunity. Obviously, that gives you, early in that process, you're going to have to develop a topic idea. And typically the topic idea is not that detailed. They're looking typically for a title, a brief discussion, 2, 3 sentences, maybe 4 sentences, a paragraph about what that topic is. Oftentimes they'll ask you who the target audience is and maybe some key takeaways. That's the kinds of things you need to typically make a submission to be considered to speak. It's not that hard. And you'll want to put several of those out there as quickly as you can, because you're not going to always get accepted. I mean, we do this fairly frequently now, relatively speaking. It's not in post-COVID, it's still not frequent yet, but I mean, we were up to 3, 4, 5 times a year that we were speaking. And I would still say that, a third of the time we were not accepted when we put a submission in to speak. And that's okay. It is what it is. It's not the end of the world. But that's my suggestion, is that you put in more submissions than you actually have time to speak, because it's unlikely they will all get accepted, at least, especially early on when you're an unknown. The real upside of it, though, Shelby already mentioned it to a certain extent, is the marketing. You can co-market with this organization, whoever it is. And in social media in particular, if you're tagging them, it's not unlikely that they won't at least like your post and potentially reshare it, right? And so that's a good thing from a marketing perspective. And that can go on for a long time. That can go on for 2 or 3 months before the event, once you're accepted and you're speaking. So you can get additional advertising impressions out of this. And then as you get closer and closer to the event, you're going to have to, complete your deck, submit your deck, your slide deck for review. They may want you to make some changes. I've had that happen, and that's fine. And then, on the day of, make sure you're ready and prepared, do your presentation. And then honestly, to me, the really fun part happens. Depending on the event, and it varies, you're going to have people come up and talk to you when you're done speaking. We had one this year, it was earlier, maybe that's last year already, where we had 50 some people in the room, and we literally had to stop taking questions so that the next speaker could get in the room and get set up. And that, that's not a bad thing, but that is also be respectful of other speakers. Start on time, finish on time. And if there's time between you and the next speaker, if there is a next speaker, make sure you don't go so long that you're invading the next speaker's setup time and preparation time. So.
And be prepared for technical difficulties.
Oh my God.
Like,
wow, right?
Well, it's just true. I mean, if a lot of times you're using your presentation on their equipment through their cables and PC versus Mac and this kind of projector and on and on and on, or the microphone doesn't work, just make sure you can be flexible. If you save your presentation in several different formats, even if you can, make sure you have it on a thumb drive when you arrive, even if you've submitted it to the company or the organization already. Just make sure you have kind of a backup plan.
Absolutely.
Don't get frustrated.
that's very, yeah. And don't forget your connector for the video output, like somebody did.
Yeah. That's good too.
Fortunately, I was able to walk back to my hotel room. In that case, it wasn't a big deal. All right. Yeah. So, I mean, we have chosen to make public speaking a part of our marketing and our business plan. And we found it to be pretty important and pretty successful over the years. So hopefully something you'll consider. If you have any questions about that, you can always reach out to us. I'm Jim at colorcasters.com, and Shelby is Shelby at colorcasters.com. I don't think we have a whole lot of upcoming events to talk about right now, except for our color management professional online training in July. You can find more out at colorcasters.com. Just look for training opportunities and you'll find it there. It's a one-day event, and we would love to have you.
Okay.
All right. We will see you next episode.